Hello and welcome to The Creators Corner, an interview series with Arab and Muslim American creators who are doing groundbreaking work in their fields. My name is Hanna-Attisha, and today I am joined by Cherien Dabis. Cherien is a Palestinian American writer, director, and actor. Her directorial credits include the award-winning show Ramy, Ozark, Empire, and Quantico. She also directs and produces her own films, including the film Amreeka and May in the Summer. So my first thought when looking at all your credits over the years is, do you even sleep?
I do. I sleep a lot more now than I used to.
That's great.
I've been quite a workaholic in my life, and I guess there were many things I was running away from. And no, I definitely love my work, and I have felt a real sense of purpose in my work. And so it's been a gift in a lot of ways in that, it has been my escape from difficult political situations, like, for example, this pandemic. It's been kind of amazing to have the outlet of creativity and to be able to write during this time. I mean, that's been a real gift. And I've definitely done that at various other moments in my life where, I can just tune things out and really focus and get a lot of satisfaction from really diving headlong into a story.
Do you find that you've been able to produce or create more now that things have kind of shut down?
It's been really interesting because, I spent a number of years after I made May in the Summer, I felt really depleted. I think after Amreeka and May in the Summer, I just was broke. I was making indie features at that moment in my life. I hadn't broken into television yet. I accumulated debt from making my own features and, sort of investing everything I had in them and not really making any money to sustain myself. And my health suffered a little bit too, because I was working so hard. I mean, literally, I had to make it my job to learn how to relax for like a good couple of years. And I was still working, but I was learning how to do so in a more relaxed way. So that wasn't entirely easy. But in the last few years, I started to really get back my inspiration and I started to really feel energized again. And interestingly enough, it kind of culminated in like the last 2 years where I really dove back into my own projects, my own work, my own creations. And then when the quarantine came, I got even more inspired. And I didn't really know where it was coming from other than it seemed to be a buildup. It was like It was like a combination of learning to relax and learning to, because what's so interesting is that I'm the workaholic. I'm the kind of workaholic that I can work myself into the ground. And it's not healthy. And it's also it's like, for example, if I've got my heart set on writing something, I'll just sit in front of my computer and make myself write. And what I had to do was learn to get up and go for a walk or be out in nature or do something inspiring or take a bath and like just relax. So it was like learning how to relax brought inspiration back into my life. And because everything was shut down around the pandemic, I think it inspired me because obviously I have the privilege to be inspired because so many people were out of work and, just suffering. But I suddenly felt like all the pressure's off. Right. Everybody in this industry is kind of preoccupied with the news and what's happening. And I was too, to an extent, but no one expected anything from anyone else all of a sudden. And what that did was it allowed me to write for myself again and to like just create from a place of sheer inspiration without any expectation or any deadline or anyone going like, hey, when are you going to have that to me? And it brought joy back into the process. So it's kind of from a creative standpoint and a standpoint of inspiration has been a really amazing year in that way.
Did you still feel depleted after it because of the work, because of the reception, because of everything that went into kind of getting it made?
Because of everything that went into getting it made. So when I made Amreeka, it was 2008, and literally from the time that we started shooting to the time we finished shooting, the world changed. Like the whole financial collapse happened while we were shooting. So I found myself at Sundance with Amreeka, like trying to sell a film during a recession. And slowly from there, indie film, just like the budgets were shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And while Amreeka, definitely enjoyed a good deal of critical success, incredible film festival success, award success, it didn't really enjoy commercial success, at least not as much commercial success as was needed for me to really command, that same size budget for my second feature. So my second feature was actually half the budget of my first for reasons of the sort of economic recession, indie films in general, just budgets shrinking and being slashed right and left, but also because Amreeka, wasn't like a smashing commercial success. So, and also because of the fact that I was, in front of the camera and behind the camera, and I ended up producing the movie, even though that was kind of more by accident, I was so exhausted and depleted, and I started suffering insomnia during the shoot. So like for weeks on end, I was really getting only like 3 hours of sleep a night. So basically, long story short, just making those indie features, because they're indie independent, they're indie international features.
Right.
So there was an incredible amount of traveling back and forth between the US and the Arab world to get those films made and cast and financed. I think my body was just like, oh, you are done. Like, you cannot keep working like this. And in a way, it needed to happen because it was like learning to just literally relax. I don't know how else to put it other than just like literally learning to relax and not hold so much stress and tension in my body was so incredibly beneficial. I just don't think I could have kept going in the way that I was. And I think in a way it's like a lifelong lesson because I'm someone who can just easily get tense and stressed out in these kind of like, movie set environments. Working in television helped a lot because I just had to keep doing it. Like I kept going into, the environment of production, and, production can be such a high stress environment. And each television show I directed gave me another opportunity to just go, nope, you're going to relax. Like you're going to have fun. Like the only thing that you're supposed to do here is just, because I'm a planner. Like I plan so much in advance as a director that when I show up on set, I can afford to just be spontaneous, have fun, be in the moment, be focused, like all the things that I really love to do. So it was just like every episode was like an opportunity to learn how to just be more and more relaxed and more like just surrender to, whatever's happening. Even if things are going wrong, you just say, okay, there's nothing I can do. I surrender.
So you magically found your peace on a TV set, one of the most stressful places.
Yeah, I ended up literally like having to learn how to meditate.
This is great. So I want to talk about Ramy. It was one of my favorite shows of the past 2 years. It took a lot of risks, and I'm wondering if you were surprised at the mainstream popularity and the critical success it enjoyed as a mainstream hit.
I was and I wasn't. I think, when I first met Ramy and heard his comedy and then read those scripts, I was like so excited because I just knew this has so much potential to like be huge, to like really be seen and to make an impact and to reach a wide audience. And it is just something that when you read something or when you talk to someone and you're like, oh, they really have something. They have such a unique voice and such an ability to reach out and just kind of touch all kinds of people. So I had a really good feeling about it. At the same time, when something comes out and it's so beloved, you can't help but also just be like thrilled and surprised. So it was like a combination of those two things where, it's like, it's everything that you hope for and kind of expect on a certain level. But then, when it happens and, the Golden Globes and the Emmys, I mean, that was just, I think, even beyond expectation.
And how did you end up getting involved in it?
Well, I actually was introduced to Ramy by a mutual friend, an actor named Walid Zaiter. So Walid, I don't even know how Walid and Ramy were hooked up, but Walid just sent an email literally introducing Ramy and I, and Ramy was like, had seen Amreeka and really wanted me to direct on the show. And that's really it. It was like from there were a few complications in that I had. Anyway, it's not even worth going into, but I just knew from the moment I heard about the show that it was something so uniquely special and something I really wanted to be involved in. I knew that it was going to be massive for our community, but also just massive for the world, for people to see an Arab Muslim family on television was just going to be such a big deal.
And you directed a few episodes that really, it had a lot of cultural tripwires that you had to navigate. Can you tell me a little bit about the episodes you directed and the process of it going to its final product?
Yeah, so I directed 4 episodes in season 1 of Ramy, and then I directed 2 episodes in season 2. 2 of the episodes that I directed in season 1 focused on the female character. So most of the show revolves around Ramy, but the 2 of the particular episodes I directed revolved around Ramy's mom and Ramy's sister. And the mom episode, which is one of my favorites. I mean, from the moment I read that script, I was like, oh man, this one's really special. And really kind of was close to my heart because just reminded me of my own mom. But it's basically the story of a really lonely immigrant mom who is trying to connect with people. Her husband works and her kids go out to, I don't even know, Ramy's off to work or
causing trouble
with buddies. Yeah, Ramy's just getting in trouble. And Dina, the sister, is at university getting her graduate degree. So she's often home alone, kind of cooking, and she just really craves human connection. And even when her husband's home, he's just always watching television. So she decides to become a Lyft driver and starts really trying to connect with her passengers in some inappropriate ways, like some really funny, inappropriate ways, like offering them food or giving them backhanded compliments and things like that. And she meets a French driver a French passenger. She meets a French passenger who she finally has a connection with. And anyway, it's such a great episode. And Hiam Abbas, who I've worked with many times, plays Ramy's mom, and she's so fantastic. It was the 3rd time I'd gotten to direct her. So it was really fun to kind of dive into that experience of what it is to be kind of a lonely immigrant and a lonely mom and try to, connect with people from another culture.
Right.
There's so many layers to that, experience. And the episode is just, it's funny, it's touching, it's heartwarming. It's just tonally just that really kind of delicious mix of things that I really love to explore in my work.
Was there a lot of debate around some of the storylines in those episodes?
There definitely, every episode was different. So, for example, the episode about the mom becoming a Lyft driver was like barely changed. From the draft that I first saw and loved, we changed certain things, like it was McDonald's and, we made it White Castle. That was to me a little bit of like an ode to Amreeka, it was like, and White Castle was so cooperative on Amreeka, which was surprising because they, as a Palestinian filmmaker, sometimes you go out to these companies and they don't want to work with you simply because you're Palestinian. So the fact that White Castle actually supported Amreeka and gave us money to create a White Castle in Canada was massive.
Oh, wow. I didn't know they did that.
So we made White Castle in Ramy. And that was partly because of my experience with them on Amreeka. And so that script was just like so fantastic and everybody loved it from the beginning. There were some other scripts that were a little bit rougher to start and where there was a lot of conversation, a lot of different people chiming in about the storylines. And so, for example, the story about Ramy's sister, Dina, in season 1 changed quite a bit from the draft that I initially received. And, I sort of was part of that process of helping to shape that episode.
Do you think the success of Ramy will make projects like it easier to get made?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I certainly hope so. And I don't know that we've seen it quite yet.
Yeah.
But I think that we're in the midst of it. So we could be seeing it in the next couple of years. But I definitely think that there is more interest. And I think that's also because of the current political climate. I think in general, they're more interested in diverse stories, and they want to know, Black, Indigenous people of color. They want to hear from those communities now. And, it's sad that it's taken, this level of civil unrest in this country for people to realize there's a lot of incredible racism and marginalization, and, we still have so much work to do here. For years, American privilege and American kind of critique of countries, foreign countries. It's like, nope, now it's time to, really look inward and look at the sort of infestation of racism and hatred that have kind of created this country. So why don't we do that now? I say we, but I'm like, I don't fully feel American, so I don't even know why I'm saying we. I guess I live here now. So
you're here. We're all here.
Responsibility. Even though I'm like, wait a minute, I've been the butt of your racism. So
when you talk about racism, it really impacted your family.
So basically, I grew up mostly in a really small rural town in the northwestern corner of Ohio. And my dad was the town pediatrician. And for the most part, growing up, we were just exotified. Everyone knew we were Arabs. We were just kind of exotified and othered. But we were friends and neighbors, and, there was nothing really that, horrible or racist until the first Gulf War, when suddenly overnight we were just completely ostracized. I mean, we went from friends and neighbors to total enemies and terrorists. And there were death threats left in our mailbox almost on a daily basis. Most of my dad's patients, I'd say more than half of my dad's patients left. They decided they wanted to boycott the Arab doctor. The Secret Service came to my high school to investigate a rumor that my sister threatened to kill the president. And it just goes on and on. My mom was accused of taking down the yellow ribbons that were up, in support of our troops, which of course she never did. She was kicked out of certain stores when she went into shop. It was really, really, really a challenging time. And, I was a teenager, and I was 14 years old during the first Gulf War. So it was a real awakening for me as far as understanding racism and understanding that I was not American. I mean, up to that point in my life, I just wanted to fit in. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm not American and I will never be American. And I kind of went the opposite direction, just wanted to be Arab. I was like, why are we even here? Let's go back home. Let's go back to, to Jordan, really, at that time. That was most of my family is actually in Jordan. So, it was really intense. And that experience really launched a long process that eventually led to my becoming a filmmaker. I mean, I became really obsessed with the media and how misrepresented and underrepresented we were, because I realized people were watching the news and they were making conclusions about us. And it was really shocking to realize that, but I needed to understand why. Why were people accusing us of being threatening, of being terrorists, of being, why was my dad suddenly a threat? It didn't make sense to me. And so it wasn't until I really started exploring that question that I concluded it's the fault of television and film and the news and media. And I started to really pay attention to all of that. And I started to realize we're not represented, and I want to tell our story. I want to tell our side of the story. People need to know who we are. So, it was a really, really challenging experience. And I mean, there were, my parents thought to move. I mean, every night there was a conversation about possibly leaving town.
It sounded like you guys became a town pariah. And 50% is not a small number. I was thinking maybe 1 or 2. But
it was much bigger than that.
This is a whole town. And the Secret Service, can you tell me about that? Like, what, they showed up to your sister's school? I mean, you're high school too, probably.
I was in high school as well. Yeah, my sister was a senior. And they just showed up at the high school because of a tip that they received that my sister threatened to kill the president, which is just so ludicrous because, I mean, you know, she might have been a threat to me, but she certainly was not a threat to the country. She was just outspoken in her history class. And we think that that's, you know, we think that like a student in that class who didn't like what she was saying potentially, you know, made some call to the Secret Service. And luckily for us, the principal of the high school did not let them anywhere near her. He literally said, if anything happens, I will take responsibility. Like, that is how much I know this is absolutely ludicrous and you shouldn't be here.
Wow.
And that principal inspired the character of the principal in Amreeka, who's a bit of an ally and friend to the main character and her son. And apparently the principal convinced them that it was just a bogus threat and it was utterly, like, there was no basis for it. And they left, but he needed to tell my sister and my parents what happened. So he did. And I mean, my sister was literally sick. She came down with a fever of 104 that night. She was utterly terrified. I mean, you're 17 years old and the Secret Service is coming after you.
That's a good reason. That's a good reason to be terrified. That's justified.
She was terrified. I mean, I think she missed a few days of school after that. But wow, I mean, I look back on that and I still look back on that and I still just can't believe it happened.
And did you guys move after that?
We didn't. Surprisingly, the ground war ended and people returned to normal. And some of my dad's patients even returned to his office. And I could not believe it. I mean, it was so, you know, it's times like that where you really know who your friends are. And, you know, even as a freshman in high school, I lost friends. I had friends who literally came up to me and said, my brother may go to war because of you. Like, because of me. Like, I mean, just people who literally had no clue. So, yeah, it was just everything changed in the span of that month. And then when the small town kind of returned to normal, I mean, it was like my family and I, like, we just kind of, it was like looking out from under the rubble going like, are you kidding me? So everything's okay now? But of course, you know, nothing was ever the same for us.
You can never forget that, surely. Yeah, and you didn't.
No, I made a movie of it.
And some people might be watching this who want to be filmmakers, want to be creators in some ways, writer, actor. How did you break into the industry as somebody who came, a Palestinian American, who came from a small town in Ohio? How did you manage to make that leap?
Very carefully. No, actually not carefully at all. I took a huge leap. I literally just jumped off a cliff. I think I was pretty bold. And if I look back, I think it was really brave because I didn't have any support. My dad expected me to be a doctor. Like, I hate to be another cliche, but that was very much the case. It is the case, Eddie. And I took a huge risk. I had been making little movies since I was 12. My parents bought a camcorder when I was 12, and my mom handed it to me. And just because I like to work things and figure out how things worked and take things apart. So I started using it. And my mom wanted me to record boring things like birthdays. And so I started telling people what to do on camera to make it more fun. I started telling them what to do and to say. And honestly, that was the beginning of my career. You know, we didn't really have like you know, the internet and email and things like that back then for me to really be able to like edit things and post them. And but I started really exploring my creativity, and I was a dancer growing up, so I was really exploring my creativity. So it wasn't a huge leap in my head because it was something I knew I really wanted from the time that I was young, but I didn't have any support. And I went out on a limb and I applied to film school, and that was really how I broke in. I went to Columbia Film School. I got my MFA. And for me, film school it's not necessary for everyone, but for me, I think it was really necessary because I wanted to immerse myself. I wanted to say, this is a period of time in which I'm going to invest in myself and my training and my learning this craft. And I'm going to emerge from film school with things that I can make and get made. And I really, really worked incredibly hard in film school. I mean, I took out loans, so I had no choice but to work really hard and to work at the same time that I was in school. And I came out of film school with a short film and 2 feature scripts, and Amreeka was one of those feature scripts. And I just started, I just hit the pavement. I just started literally applying to every program out there, from Sundance to Tribeca to, everything I heard of, I just applied to. And in that way, I found people who started to champion, me, my voice, my projects, me in general. And so it was fantastic. Like, that was really how I got my start.
And when you made Amreeka, you actually had a pretty steady TV writing gig on the L Word. Why was it so important for you to make your own films? Because you could have easily had a pretty nice track as a TV writer at that point.
Well, what's so funny is I didn't want to be a TV writer. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And the one thing I knew about myself was that I was a storyteller. Mm-hmm. I knew that going into film school. I knew that I had stories to tell, and I was burning to tell these stories. I needed to tell these stories. So for me, television, at least initially, was a detour. And that's what I thought in my head. It took me getting to the set of my first feature of Amreeka for me to really understand the huge gift that I was given in getting that job and in getting to work in television as a writer. And, I was the writer on set, so I got to be in the throes of television production. I learned so much, and I got to bring all of that knowledge and experience to the set of my first feature, and it was massive. I mean, I didn't even realize how much I learned until I got to that set of my first feature. And literally, people were like, "This is your first feature?" Because I just understood. I knew the language. I knew what to do. I knew exactly who did what and what this meeting was and that meeting. And I knew the economy of storytelling, so that when I had to cut the script, I knew exactly what to cut and what to keep to tell the story. It was really invaluable experience. And so interestingly enough, my interest in television came after making my features. The L Word, while I'm so fond of it looking back, at the time that I was working on it, I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have.
And what has your experience been as a female director in the way people choose you for projects or don't choose you for projects? And what happens when you're finally behind that chair and start calling shots? What has that looked like for you?
Well, interestingly enough, it's hard to say exactly because you never really know, like, what you're not being considered for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really know, but you still know that, for example, like, after Amreeka went to Sundance, I'm pretty sure, all right, how do I put this? I'm trying to figure out, how to say this. So there have been many white men who've gone to Sundance and have gotten, 3 picture deals afterwards. That has literally never happened for a woman, ever. And so I knew things like that, where I knew, these other filmmakers who are white men who were at Sundance with me are doing all these other things, and I'm not. So, you start to think, am I not being fully considered for things? Am I... you start to really kind of look at that landscape and question. But again, you have no way of really, really knowing.
Right.
I will definitely say, it's very clear that most white men in power, because let's face it, our industry is mostly white men, even still, don't want to trust women with a lot of money. And that has been something that, I mean, I have kind of felt in certain ways where, like, I'll walk into a room, like I'm going up for like a bigger film, and I feel this a little bit more recently, and I feel like kind of from the beginning I'm not being taken entirely seriously. And that's, again, more of a feeling and more of a just kind of an instinct of, like, I don't even know why I'm here. I feel like they just wanted to at least say that they met some women directors or something. You know what I'm saying? When I'm on set, you know, and I don't know if I took on an air of authority because to make up for the fact that I'm a woman, but I definitely command the set. And I'm someone who is, I mean, look, I'm not quiet. Like, I've got a booming voice. I can be, you know, I can be very opinionated, and I know what I want when I go into a set. And yet I'm not afraid to say, I don't know, what do you think? Because I think that's really valuable to you know, admit when you don't know and to pull people into the process and value other people's opinions in the process. And I think that comes with experience, like, because you have to have a certain level of confidence to say, I don't know.
Right.
And when I started out, I don't know that I said it as readily as I'm willing to now. But I don't feel like when I'm on a set that there's any disrespect or, misogyny or, you know, any weirdness about being a woman. There was, well, actually, there have been a couple of incidences now that I'm thinking about it. There was one incident that was super glaring where someone on set questioned. I brought something up and someone on set was like really, really questioning me and not wanting to do the thing that I wanted to do. And was questioning me to a level of it became really uncomfortable. Like, literally everybody who was at the monitors was uncomfortable. And after this person walked away, angrily, I might add, because he had to do the thing I wanted to do because I didn't back down, all of the women around me said he would never have done that if you were a man. I've never seen him do that with men. I've only seen him do that with the women directors on set. And I will also say that I've also had white women do things like that with me. And I had a script supervisor lean over to me once and say to me about an actress who was testing me. She leaned over to me and she said, she's never done that with men. She only does that with women. She tests the women directors. So with things like that, I have had experiences like that. But thankfully, I've mostly had good experiences.
What do you think it will take for this industry to look like the way that we all hope it will look?
You know, it's really sad for me to say what I'm glad to say, but I feel like the only reason that people in Hollywood are starting to make change is because they've been shamed into it. They've literally been shamed. White Americans have been shamed. And I think it was a long time coming, and I think it needed to happen. Because so many people turned a blind eye. So many people were like, oh, I don't think of my, you know, like, I'm cool, I'm woke, I'm progressive, I'm this, I'm that. You know what? No, you're not. You're actually part of the problem. Because you're just perpetuating the systemic racism that exists. And this is how you're doing it. And, you know, sadly, I think it's going to continue to be a process of shaming to get people to change. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that because I enjoy shaming or because I am actually doing it. I don't even think I'm necessarily, you know, doing it. I just think culturally we've come to a moment where you know, yes, there is like a shaming that's happening, and it is a necessary shaming because it's getting people to see the insanely gross inequality and injustice of the system.
I have so many questions for you, so I'll try to pick a few. But what would you tell someone today, considering being a filmmaker? You also wear the hat of producer, actor, so feel free to comment on any of those things. Do you have advice of what to do and what not to do? Sometimes that advice can be very helpful too.
Yes. What to do? Work your craft. Work your craft. Work it and work it and rework it and rework it. You know, especially if you're writing is rewriting. Do not send something out before it's ready. Do not send something out too early, because people, especially if you're an emerging filmmaker, writer, people will only read you once. You've got one shot. The second thing that I would say is do not stalk people online. If you don't know them, just sending them a message via social media and stalking them is not a good idea. Like you're not going to find champions in that way. And there's so many people who kind of try that route, and I don't think that works. I think it totally backfires. I think that it's just going to be a combination of really hard work and networking, and there's something to be said for meeting people before you start to engage with them and ask them to read your stuff. And I think it's hard because with people being so accessible online, it's like we think that we can just reach out to anybody and they'll kind of be open, but I think that this business is all about relationships, and relationships take time. And I think that you have to find ways to network and meet people in person. And that's still always the best way to build a relationship.
Hopefully we'll be able to do that very soon.
I know. Right. Pandemic has been challenging.
Hopefully in the coming months. Thank you so much, Cherien Dabis, for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was all mine.